Welcome to 9-6 notes. So we are going to continue factoring. The difference between today's lesson and the previous lesson is that A is no longer going to be 1. So factoring when A is 1 is a lot easier than when A is not 1. So in our first example, we have to factor 2x squared plus 17x plus 21. So whenever we are factoring, so don't forget this, whenever you factor a trinomial like this, you always want to check all three of these terms to see if they have any common factors. Does any number go into all three of these numbers besides 1? The answer to that is no. So the greatest common factor of all three of these numbers would be 1. Next thing I'm going to check for is, do all three of these terms have the same variable? So we got an x squared and an x. So these both have x, at least one x. This does not have an x, so nope. So there's no greatest common factor besides 1. Next, I'm going to need to know how to factor 2x squared. So what two things can I multiply together to equal 2x squared? If I multiply 2x times 1x, or 2x times x, that will equal 2x squared. So I know when I have my answer, the two first terms in each set of the parentheses will be 2x and x. And then I take a look at the c value. So what two numbers multiply to equal 21? So that's what this is asking right here. What are the factors of 21? So it's either 1 times 21 or it's 7 times 3. So we were doing that yesterday with a little factor tree like this. So 1 times 21 and then 3 times 7. So I'm just going to try one of those things. So it's a little bit of a guess and check here. So I know these are 2x and x, and then the two other numbers have to either be 1 and 21 or 7 and 3. So let's try. Oh, by the way, these are both plus signs, so that means these are both going to be plus signs as well. So let's try 3 and 7. So if I use FOIL to multiply these two together, 2x times x is 2x squared. Multiply the outside to get 2x times 7, that's 14x. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 7 is 21. Combine like terms, so 2x squared plus 14x. Oops, I didn't combine like terms. Combine the like terms, so 14x plus 3x is 17x plus 21. So is that what we started with? Yes, it is. So I factored this correctly. So you're not always gonna, I actually didn't mean to do that. I just guessed. So I actually guessed correctly. So you're not always gonna get it correct on the first time. So if the answer we got down here was not what we started with, we'd have to change the 3 and the 7 around, or try 1 and 21 possibly. So the way we were doing it on the last section, we were doing the same thing, but to me it's a little bit neater. So I like to make this a little box. So if we're using the 2x squared plus 17x plus 21, A will go in the first slot, B goes out here, and then C goes in the second slot. So the two numbers in these two boxes need to multiply together to equal 2. So we only have one choice, it's 2 and 1, or 1 and 2. So that part's easy. Now I need to figure out two numbers that multiply to equal 21. So we made our factor tree up here. So we're going to use those. However, whatever numbers I choose here, I'm going to have to multiply across. And when I multiply across, these two numbers are going to have to add up to 17. So let's say that I tried 3 and 7 right here. So 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 7 is 7. 6 plus 7 is not 17. So that means these two numbers, the 3 and the 7, are not correct. So I'm going to have to try again. So what if I switch the order and do 7 and 3? So 2 times 7 is 14. 1 times 3 is 3. So 14 plus 3 is 17. So that means I have the correct answer in this box. So remember, we start with the top left. That's going to be multiplied times x. So 2 times x, add the diagonal, 2x plus 3. Bottom left times x, so 1 times x or just x, add the diagonal, so plus 7. So that's 2 different ways to do these. Whichever way you feel more comfortable with, feel free to do it that way. On number 2. So again, first thing we check for, look at all 3 of these terms. Do they have a common factor or a GCF bigger than 1 or different than 1? So does the number go into 6, 11, and 3? No, only 1 goes into all 3 of those. And they do not all have an x, so the answer is no. What are the factors of 6x squared? So we either have 6x times x, that would equal 6x squared if I multiplied those two. But also, what if I multiplied 3x times 2x? That would also equal 6x squared. So we have 2 choices. We either have 2x and 3x, and it doesn't matter what order those go in, or we have 6x and x, same thing. The order doesn't really matter. So what are the factors of c? So c in this case is 3. So the factors of 3 are just 3 and 1. Those are the only 2 numbers that multiply to equal 3. So that means our second 2 numbers have to be 3 and 1. I don't know what order they go in, but we'll have to figure that out. So I'm going to use the box again. If you don't like the box, you don't have to use it. So A is 6, so 6 is going to go in the first slot. B goes on the outside. C goes in the second slot. So I need to figure out 2 numbers that multiply to equal 6. So this is kind of where we guess and check. So I'm going to try 3 and 2. And then 2 numbers that multiply to equal 11. So I'll try, and keep in mind that these are both plus signs. So that means all our numbers are going to be positive. So I'll try 1 and 11. So 3 times 11 is 33. 2 times 1 is 2. These 2 numbers obviously do not add up to 3. So that is not correct. Oh, and I've put the whoops, put the numbers in the wrong spot, which would have made that impossible. Sorry, C goes there and B goes here. So that was my fault, I'm sorry. So let's try 1 and then 3. So 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. If I add 6 plus 3, that does not equal 11. So that means the 1 and 3 are not in the right spot. So let's switch the order. So I'll put 3 and 1. So 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 1 is 2. When I add 9 plus 2, I do get 11. So that means the correct answers are here in this box. So we start with the top left number in the box. Multiply it by x. Add its diagonal. Bottom number in the box. Multiply it times x. Add its diagonal. So this would be your answer. 3x plus 1 times 2x plus 3. So example 3, first thing we are going to check for, do all 3 of these have any common factors besides 1? So 3, 2, and 8, they do not have any common factors. These terms do not all have a variable either, so I cannot reduce them before I factor. So make the box. Hopefully I do it correctly this time. So A goes up here. B, -2, goes out here, and then C goes in the second slot. So 2 numbers that multiply to equal 3, so that would be 3 and 1. And again, it does not matter the order, these first 2 numbers that you put them in. So now I need to figure out 2 numbers that multiply to equal -8. So the factors of 8 are 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. So I have to have some combination of either 1 and 8 or 2 and 4 in here. So these are both minus signs. So that means when you factor these, one sign is going to be plus, one's going to be minus. So it could look like this, or it could look like this. Because when I multiply 2 numbers to equal -8, that would be these two numbers. One has to be negative, one has to be positive. So that's how I know that is true. So to multiply two numbers to equal -8, I'm going to try 2 and 4 first. So I'll try -2 and +4. So 3 times -2 is -6. 1 times 4 is 4. When I add -6 plus 4, I get -2. So I guessed correctly on the first try. So that means my answers are in this box. So I'm going to start with the top left. So I have 3x plus its diagonal, so +4. And then I go to the bottom left. So 1x, or just x, plus -2, or x minus 2. And that would be your answer, 3x plus 4 times x minus 2. In example 4, again, we are going to check if all of these have any common factors. So 6, 11, and 4, none of those have any common factors, or all three of them do not have common factors. They do not all have an x in them, only 2 of them. So I'm just going to start to factor. So A is 6, C is 4, B is 11. Sometimes it'll help to write it out like this too. So B is 11, C is 4. So we got all pluses, so that means all the numbers are going to be positive. So two numbers that multiplied equals 6. I'll try 3 and 2 again. Two numbers that multiplied equal 4. I'll try 2 and 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. When I add 6 plus 4, that does not equal 11. So I have the wrong number. So I'll try 1 and 4 now. So 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. Looks like this is going to work because 3 plus 8 is 11. So remember that the numbers on the outside of the box, you are always adding to equal this. The numbers on the inside, you're always multiplying them until you get to the answer. So now that we know the answer is in the box, I'm going to start with the top left and multiply that times x. So 3 times x plus its diagonal. 2 times x plus its diagonal, so 2x plus 1. That was a no. And that's our answer. And finally, example 5. Actually, we got 2 more examples. So do 9, 65, and 14 have any common factors? Well, 14, the only factors are 7 and 2, besides 1 and 14. And 7 and 2 do not go into 9, nor do they go into 65. So the answer is no. So I'm going to go ahead and start to factor. So A is 9, B is -65, C is 14. So two numbers that multiply together to equal 9. I'm going to try 9 and 1 here because I happen to know what the answer might be here. So this sign is negative, which means when I add the two numbers together, they have to equal a negative number. This sign is positive. Whenever C is positive, that means our answer will always have the same sign. So it'll either look like that or it'll look like that. But if B is negative, it has to look like this. So we're going to end up with 2 negative numbers in here because these two numbers have to equal they have to multiply to equal a positive 14. So I'll try -7 and -2. So 9 times -7 is -63. 1 times -2 is -2. When I add -63 plus -2, I get -65. So that means my answers are here in the box. So I start with the top left. So 9x plus its diagonal, so -2. Then 1x, or just x, -7. So last example, we have a rectangular prism. That's a really good job. So the volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. So we need to figure out the 3 dimensions of this rectangular prism. This is the volume that they give us. So if we know the volume, if I can factor that, that should give me the 3 dimensions of the rectangular prism. before I do the box, we should always check, do these things have any common factors? This time, they actually do. They are all even numbers. So that means I can factor out 2. Also, each one has at least one x in it, so I can factor out an x. So the lowest exponent on x would be 1, so it'll just be x to the 1 on the outside. So now I'm going to divide these by what I factored out. So 60 divided by 2 is 30. X cubed divided by x is just x squared. 34 divided by 2 is 17. X squared divided by x is x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. X divided by x is 1, so I'll just leave it like that. So now I'm going to try to factor what's inside of the parentheses. So that's when I use my box. A is 30, B is 17, C is 2. So I need two numbers that multiply to equal 30. So if you want, you could make a factor tree. So 30, so 1 times 30, and I know these notes are going long again. 3 times 10, 5 times 6. The only two numbers that I know that multiply to equal 2 are 2 and 1. And again, since these are both pluses, I know all these numbers are going to be positive. So let's try 6 and 5. So 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. So 12 plus 5 is 17. So that means all the numbers are correct inside of the box. So I take the top left multiplied times x. Add its diagonal, so 6x plus 1. Take the bottom left multiplied times x, add its diagonal, so 5x plus 2. And don't forget, we still have a 2x on the outside. So this would be our answer for factoring, but they want the 3 dimensions. So the 3 dimensions are 2x, 6x plus 1, and then 5x plus 2. So make sure you star this question. This question is very important. In fact, well, you have to know how to factor. This factoring is very important. But this question in particular, you're going to see it again.